Hello and welcome to the first of many of your online video lectures. Today we are going to talk about the international monetary and financial environment. We're going to talk all about what happens with money across international borders. We're going to talk about what happens when the dollar gets stronger and what happens when the dollar gets weaker. What effect does that have on imports? What effect does that have on exports? And what effect does that have on the monetary system across the world? We're also going to talk about what happens, or what are the causes of the dollar to get weaker or the dollar to get stronger. We're going to talk about exchange rates. We're going to talk about baskets of goods and the exchange rate. And we're going to talk about how to calculate exchange rates. It's a pretty heavy chapter. There's about 28 slides or so, but there's some really key concepts, and I'll point them out as we go along. But truly the key concept is you really need to understand what happens to imports and exports when the dollar gets weaker or when the dollar gets stronger. And what are the causes for the government to make the dollar get weaker or get stronger? And what other monetary or financial things would have to happen in the United States for the dollar to get weaker and stronger? So again, it's pretty heavy, but we're going to get through it. We are going to start, however, the lecture with me going over the new syllabus. This is your first lecture that you've had since we've gone off of the face-to-face classes. And I have revised the syllabus, so I'm going to talk for the first couple of minutes of this lecture about the syllabus and what I expect of you. If anybody has any questions, certainly you can email me or text me, as my cell phone is on the top of the syllabus. With that being said, let's get into the syllabus, and then let's get into the international monetary and financial environment. So as I said in the introduction, what we're going to start with is the syllabus. The first thing, please take note, is my cell phone, 585-314-3244. For any of you that have troubles during this particular crisis, or pandemic, as it were, please don't hesitate to call me or send me an email or text me. As I said in my email to you, we are suspending all case studies, so the case studies are no longer. So instead of having the case studies that we're going to do in the future, your grade is going to be based on the case study that you've already done. Everybody's done their case studies, so we should be in good shape there. The other thing is there's not going to be a project. Therefore, I have added 10% to the final exam and 10% to the individual case studies in order to make up for the 20% that used to be the project. So there isn't a project anymore. Finally, the last thing I want to call your attention to is the schedule. As you can see right here, there is no case studies. If you look at the schedule, chapters 8 and 9 are going to be done the week of the 23rd, or whenever you actually want to watch them, as well as 10 and 11. We are going to have our midterm examination on the week of the 30th. So that means you're going to have, when we come back, you're going to have really 2 weeks, because you can take your midterm anytime during that week, really 2 weeks to go through chapter 9, 10, and 11. We've already gone through chapter 8. So you'll have to go through 9, 10, 11 in approximately about 2 weeks when you come back. Your midterm examination will cover chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And again, as I said in my email, what I'll do is I'll put the midterm examination online, and it will open at 8 o'clock in the morning, the 30th, the week of the 30th. It will close Friday night at midnight, the week of the 30th, and you will have any time between that time to take it. Once you start taking it, you'll have an hour. You cannot backtrack. So if you come to question 9, you need to answer it. You can't skip it and come back to it. That way you can't look up answers. You'll have an hour. Make sure you have strong Wi-Fi, and also make sure that you have strong battery life so that you don't get kicked off. Once you get kicked off, you're out, and you can't get back in again. If anybody has any questions about the what's due or the syllabus, please let me know. Again, there's no case studies due. The last one we did was Ecuadorian Rose, which was presented in class. Everybody's done their case studies. We've done 5 case studies. So that will be your grade. Now, we need to turn our attention to the international monetary and financial environment. 150 currencies are in use worldwide. There are all types of currencies. Obviously, the world currency is the dollar, along with the euro. Those are the 2 strongest currencies in the world. You have the yuan, which is in both China, and then a different yuan in Japan. Most currencies are not convertible. In other words, the euro you can convert to the United States dollar. Same thing with the yuan. But there's many currencies out there that are not convertible to the dollar, and are not traded on the exchange rate. They are pegged to a basket of good and not floating like the euro, like the dollar, and some of the other ones. We're going to talk about that in a little bit later. The exchange rate really is how much you can buy one currency for another. How much does one currency cost? And the exchange rate really affects the country in the fact that it affects balance of trade, it affects imports, exports, it affects GDP, and a lot of other things. And we're going to get into that pretty heavily here in just a minute. Constantly fluctuating, and I'm going to move me over here so you can see things. Constantly fluctuating exchange rates really require people to understand what's going on in the world and speculate. Speculate means think what's going to happen. If you can speculate on the exchange rate and you can catch it at the right time, in other words, if you think the euro is going to go down, you would sell them. If you think the euro is going to go up, you would buy them. You can make a lot of money. But really, people need to keep in mind 3 things. The prices the firms charge can be quoted in the firm's currency or on the foreign currency. And that's important, especially when you're doing something that's going to take place, say, in 6 months or a year from now. For instance, if the United States is building, say, some infrastructure in India, well, they've got to take a look at, do they want India to pay them in dollars, or do they want India to pay them in their own currency? And there's hedging going on because you know that the currency is going to fluctuate. We're not going to get that involved in that today, but that's something that you need to understand. And that's what these 3 things are saying. You can charge whatever currency you want to because there's going to be a lot of different time that passes oftentimes before a project is done. You need to make sure that you're hedging your exchange rates, and you need to make sure that you're getting the right amount of money for what you're trying to do. So here's some exchange rates against the dollar. These were done many, many moons ago. If you look at, the Australian dollar, the Brazilian dollar. If you look at the euro, it's was at 1.12. Now it's at 1.09. So exchange rates fluctuate. That's just gives you a table. But if I were you, I wouldn't use this table if I was going to other countries, simply because it's probably not valid right now. But it gives you an idea of how much $1 would be able to buy. For instance, $1.12 will buy the 1 euro. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. And it does get confusing. So you really have to bear with me because sometimes it really does get quite confusing. So here's an exchange rate. These, and I just looked this up actually 10 minutes before I started this lecture. These are some Bose headphones. They are actually on special for $99.95. I called them $100 in US. Right now, the exchange rate, as we speak, an hour before this lecture, 1 euro would be $1.09. So in other words, if you wanted to buy a euro, you would have to pay $1.09. Or if you wanted to buy $1 with euros, you would pay 0.92 euros equals $1. So it's important to understand that that's the current exchange rate. If I wanted to buy a euro, right now I'd have to pay $1.09. If someone in Europe wanted to buy $1, they would pay 0.92 euros to get $1. So that means that these headphones, the retail price in the US is $100. The retail price in Europe would be 92 euros. It's important to understand that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through exchange rate calculations and how you figure it out. So I've put this little thing, let me move me over here again. I put this thing together, and this is how one would calculate an exchange rate. Let's take the left-hand column over here. What I just said before is $1 is 0.92 euros. So it doesn't matter whether you put euro on the top or the dollar on the bottom or the dollar on the top and the euro on the bottom. I just always like it the dollars on the top. So you put the current rate, exchange rate, 1 to 0.92. We've already talked about that. Suppose you want to know how many dollars would 50 euro buy you? So you would say, okay, the exchange rate is 1 to 92. X dollars, or I don't know how many dollars, would be 50 euros. You simply cross multiply going this way, and then solve for X. We've all done algebra in 7th grade, so we should all be able to solve for X. So that means 0.92x equals 50. Or X equals 50 over 0.92, X equals 54.3. So therefore, if I had 50 euros, I would have $54.30. $54.30 would go right here. Now, let's say you've got $75. We're going to take this one over here. Let's say you've got $75 and you want to know how many euros that would buy. The same thing. You cross multiply 1x, or X equals 75 times 0.92, or X equals 69. Therefore, $75 would buy you 69 euro. That's how you figure it out. Folks, you need to know that. It's on the next test. So remember, you just take your current rate, your dollar over whatever it is. It could be euro, it could be yuan, it could be the Australian dollar, whatever it is. You put your current rate, your dollar over theirs, and what you want to figure out, whatever you want to figure out, you put the X, you cross multiply and solve for X. I will put this example on Blackboard so that you have it, but if anybody gets confused, please look at this particular video again as I went over the exchange rate calculation. You need to understand it. Now, just think in your head though, if $1 is 0.92 euros and you got 50 euros, you know you're going to have more dollars than euros. Or if $1 is 0.92 euros and you've got $75, you know you're going to have less than 75 euros because of the exchange rate. So you have to keep that in your head, and that's a way of figuring out the exchange rate. So again, let's move me back over here. In this particular exchange rate calculation, 1 euro equals $1.09, or $1 equals 0.92 euros. The headphones in the United States would equal $100. The headphones in the European Union would equal $92. So really, currency risk is one of the major risks in international business. Currency exposure, which means if you do business in somebody's country and they're not going to pay you for many, many moons, 6 months, 7 months, you're exposed if their currency goes down or goes up. Asset valuation, that talks about inflation, foreign taxation, all types of different things are all involved in currency risk. This chapter is all about understanding currency risk and understanding supply and demand of currencies, and also understanding what currency risk does to imports and exports. With that, I'm going to sign off at part 1, and we are going to go to part 2 in just a minute.